All right, we are approximately about 15 days now into this Iran, America, Israel war that is now pulling in multiple nations in some form or fashion. Are we close to the finish line? Uh, Depends on what day you listen to the news, or what hour you listen to the news. One day it's we're getting reports from Washington that we're probably most likely gonna the war's about to end. Then the next day you hear reports of new missile strikes and drone strikes, and so we've got a lot of conflicting information out there. We've got a lot of things that may not be adding up to us and from our perspective. So at this point, a lot of people are wondering. We also, if you talk to people out there in the everyday marketplace, Americans, at least here where I'm at in the West, we're concerned that the stone has been dropped in the pond. And now, when are the ripple effects going to come to our front door? Are we going to see gas prices go through the roof? Are we going to see the cost of food and living? Is it going to skyrocket? So we've got a lot of these questions. And then we have to ask ourselves, among prophetic circles, where are we heading? Where is this thing heading long-term wise? Does the Bible tell us that this is escalating and this will expand into a major prophetic war that's been foretold thousands of years ago? Well, today I'm bringing on a special guest with us, and we're going to have a very good conversation about this. So buckle up. We got a good one.
The following program is brought to you by friends and partners of End Time Headlines.
All right, guys. So we want to welcome you to the program. This is End Time Headlines, news and headlines from a prophetic perspective. Of course, I'm your host, Ricky Scaparo, the founder and the voice of End Time Headlines. And we've got a very special guest. It's the first time he's come onto our program. Hopefully it will not be his last time. Excuse me, guys. But I want everybody to welcome Britt Gillette. Britt, thank you for coming, taking the time today from Virginia to be a part of the program today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll come back as often as you want to have me. So thanks for having me.
Well, Brett is like, if you've never had the privilege of seeing what Brett talks about, he's got a YouTube channel out there. He's got where you can find him. And you'll be very blessed by the information and the revelation that he gives you, especially, again, if you love eschatology and the study of end times, then this is one of those sources that you definitely want to bookmark and go check him out. Brett, where, for those that may be watching or listening, those about Apple or by Spotify, can you let us know where to find you, social media-wise, your website, etc., so that we can get in touch with you?
Sure. The best place to find me is at brittgillette.substack.com. That's where I post all of the content that I put out. I put out articles on a weekly basis, as well as multiple videos. And a lot of those videos go out on YouTube and Rumble and Odyssey as well, but not all of them do. So the best place to find me is at Substack at brittgillette.substack.com.
Awesome. And as you can see behind him, he's also an author of many books, if you're a book reader. And again, if you go to that link that he told you to go to visit, I'm sure he's got ways there that you can find his books that you can get a hold of. And just again, if you're like me, I'm a sponge to information, and I love getting revelatory information, especially when it comes to eschatology. So, Britt, again, thank you for taking the time out. As you and I talked off camera, I've got a lot of family that lives in Virginia, so I'm very familiar with the area. And you and I, we were joking about the weather. It's been crazy. I don't know about where you guys live, but I live in the state of Georgia. He lives in Virginia. And one day it's summer, and the next day we're back into who knows what it is, a winter, a fall. We don't know. It's all over the place, and it wreaks havoc on your sinuses and allergies and everything else. So I just want to apologize up front if you hear me clearing my throat and this and that. I'm at the mercy of the weather. So we just want to let you know that. So Britt, I want to talk about this. So as we said in the introduction of this thing, this war in the Middle East is getting crazy. Let me give you some of these headlines, and these are the latest headlines. And you guys know endtimeheadlines.org, endtimeheadlines.com. That's going to be our main website. All these articles we share on our main website. You can find those. Middle East conflict creating the largest oil supply disruption in history. Here's another article. Iran is now they're coming out and warning that they're now going to be targeting U.S. and Israeli economic banking interest. They're threatening cyber attacks on this. Then, of course, the FBI is sent out a warning yesterday that Iran-aspired drone attacks could come to the state of California in, again, what they're calling a retaliation. The United Nations World Food Program is warning that rising food and fuel prices risk pushing global hunger higher as humanitarian needs grow. And then this is the latest, Britt, that we just came over the wire this morning. Now, as we're recording this, guys, it's about 1 p.m. Eastern. So when we premiere this tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, who knows what'll happen? But as of right now, the alleged new supreme leader. There's conflicting reports. We had reports that he was injured, that his leg was injured severely. I heard he lost his leg. He went into a coma, that he couldn't come on the camera. And I know they're out there, some pundits out there making jokes, putting up cardboard cutouts. You see that, Britt, where they're doing, they're putting cardboard cutouts and having interviews with this new supreme leader. But somehow he managed to put out a new warning of vengeance that will be the priority, that they're going to target bases, and that he will also, again, he talks about the threat to the Strait of Hormuz. And got one more thing, I'm going to kick it over to you. Now, according to Axios, at least let's see if we can pull this up. I'll show everybody what we're talking about. This is from Axios, and it says here at least 20 countries are now military involved. Wow, 20 countries are now military involved into this conflict. So, Britt, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And it's like you sit back and you're scratching your head like, well, wait a minute. President Trump came out and said, we've pretty much disabled Iran, their capabilities to carry out airstrikes, their capability to carry out strikes from warships. We've sunk all their warships. We've pretty much crippled them to the point where they can't do much. But consequently, somehow, even just today, as if we're recording this, Jerusalem's reporting that there was a missile strike by the Holy Sepulchre and the Wailing Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And then Israel's under heavy attack through proxy forces like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and all them that are forming as well. So when you sit back and you scratch, and then the whole debacle with the Strait of Hormuz, you hear it's shut down, and then it's not, then it is, and then the price goes over $100 a barrel, then it drops, and then the stock market is like a roller coaster going up and down. So what the heck are we supposed to do here? What are you hearing on your end about what's going on right now?
Well, I mean, I've heard a lot of the same things. So President Trump's been out numerous times, and he said, "Well, we're winning. We're winning this war. We won it on day one." And the Iranian Air Force is gone, their Navy's gone. All of these things, those are true, but those were never really a great threat to begin with. The true threat is and always has been the ballistic missile arsenal, as well as the drone threat from Iran. And that clearly has not been neutralized. And I would point to two realities that tell us where we stand with this war. number one, they can say, and again, we hear these, oh, the Strait of Hormuz is open. Yes, it's physically open. There's nothing obstructing it in the waterway. But no ships, with the exception of Iranian ships, have moved through the Strait of Hormuz this whole month. So we're 12 days in. So effectively, the Strait of Hormuz is shut. Regardless of what people say, oil is not flowing through it. That's a big deal because 20% of the world's energy output flows through the Strait of Hormuz on a daily basis. And that's been obstructed for 12 days now. And it's not a matter of simply opening it back up, because without those flows, what we've seen is we've seen oil production shut down throughout the Gulf. So, for instance, Iraq didn't have the storage facilities that some other nations in the Persian Gulf have. So they started shutting down oil production last week to a great degree. And we're probably about 10 to 15 days away from seeing all oil production in the Gulf shut down, except that which Saudi Arabia can get out via the Red Sea. And they're already moving that at full capacity right now. So once you cap an oil well, you don't just flip a switch and turn it back on. It's going to take 2 weeks, maybe more, maybe months. And in the meantime, a lot of these facilities are getting hit, as you said, by missiles that supposedly they don't have the capability to use, but they're using these missiles and drones to destroy a lot of this infrastructure that then has to be rebuilt. So reality number one, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed indefinitely. At some point, we hope it'll open tomorrow, but it could be 6 months from now. We really do not know. Reality number two is that effectively the Red Sea has been shut down for over 2 years. So if you remember, the Houthis were harassing the shipping lanes in the Red Sea. The United States launched Operation Prosperity Guardian in December 2023, along with 17 other coalition nations. And they said, we're going to bomb the Houthis. We're going to neutralize this threat and make the waterway freely navigable for international trade again. And the full force of airstrikes and naval power went against the Houthis, and they failed in achieving that objective. Then Trump was campaigning for office and said that was just because Biden is weak. I'll take care of those Houthis. And a year ago this time, he said, we're going to neutralize this threat. And a number of airstrikes were carried out by the United States and the United Kingdom. Coordinated airstrikes. They said, we've hit all these targets just as we're hearing now. We've done all this stuff. And yet the Houthi threat remained. And to this day, Red Sea traffic is down 60% over 2022 levels. So the question I would ask is, if after 2 years we have not been able to eliminate or neutralize the Houthi threat to the Red Sea, what is the plan that's going to eliminate this threat to the Strait of Hormuz from Iran, which has all of the state resources at its disposal? It's a much bigger country. And the answer is there is not an answer to that question yet. And so there's only three ways that I see out of that. And that would be the Iranian regime falls and is replaced by a new government that will not harass the shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. So that could happen, but it's not a strategic objective that the United States can say, if we take this action, that will definitely happen. So it's more just a matter of hope that happens.
Right.
And then the only other way I see that happens is through ground troops physically landing in Iran and neutralizing those threats, or nuclear weapons being used to destroy all of Iran.
Wow.
And so these are not good options. These are terrible options, but it's where we find ourselves right now. And in the meantime, when you choke off, I think 18.8% of the world's crude oil and liquefied natural gas coming through every day. There's only so much storage. There's only so many reserves in all these different countries, particularly countries like South Korea and Taiwan that make majority of the world's semiconductors. So we saw the supply chain crisis COVID created. that was on the basis of a lot of voluntary shutdowns, government ordered shutdowns, but not uh, if the energy is not there to run your business operations, then they do not get run. And so if we see that much energy taken out of the economy, there's a direct correlation between economic growth and energy used. And so we're on the precipice of a global depression and an over leveraged financial system that will probably, uh, again, unless this is resolved by the Iranian regime just falling apart in the next few days, we're probably looking at the greatest financial and economic crisis, certainly since the Great Depression, if not ever. So this is very serious, and the media is not really telling us the story. The Trump administration, I can understand, they're not going to come out to the podium and say what I just said, because
Well,
then people would be panic buying gasoline and hoarding things.
well, let me give you what Trump just said today. This is from his Truth Social post. Quote, the United States is the largest oil producer in the world by far. So when oil prices go up, and I quote, we make a lot of money. But of far greater interest and importance to me as president is stopping an evil empire, Iran, from having nuclear weapons and destroying the Middle East and indeed the world. I won't ever let that happen. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So my question is here, and I'm telling you, I can already hear the comments in the chat and so on and so forth. Well, Brother Ricky, Brother Brent, what about Venezuela? We went in there and we got all that oil from Venezuela, and here's Trump saying that don't worry about the oil prices when they go up because quote we make a lot of money. My question is, who is we? Is it you and I? Is it the consumer? Is it the American people? Or is this the elites? Is this the people in the up, that this is not the little people. So you may be listening to this and like, wow, are you serious? A global recession? Well, guys, there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of reports coming out saying this. And Brett, I don't know, if you get kind of the kickback I get on a daily basis. When we share this stuff, we get accused of fear mongering, hyperbole, the whole 9 yards. But it's interesting to hear another prophetic voice come on here and confirm what we're hearing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I get that all the time, and for the past 2 or 3 years, I've pointed out Iran has that capability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That it would be what they would do if they are cornered and in a survival mode, and got those accusations, just like you said. Even last week, there were people saying they don't have the Navy to do this, and I think they don't understand how warfare has changed. We're not talking about naval vessels forming a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. They'll simply harass the shipping the way we've seen the Houthis do it. So simple
Mm.
observation of the last 2+ years shows us that those waterways are not easily reopened under a threat like this. And so, that's exactly what we're seeing. I don't see an easy way out of this. I mean, um, this is quite a predicament we're in. I think that uh, when Trump said that tweet that Trump made, yes, I understand the threat that Iran poses. I think that he went into this thinking that this decapitation strike of the leadership on February 28th would be the last straw and the regime would fall. And it did not work out that way. And I really don't understand how we were not prepared for the response that Iran has offered, because a number of people have pointed this out. I'm just a guy with an internet connection, and I've been pointing this out for quite some time. And here we are watching it unfold. I don't know why we were not prepared for this type of response and what it would mean. And so this is high stakes at this point. There's no real way to back out. I know Trump said we'll end the war when we want to, But he really doesn't have that option because Iran has
Right.
said
Thank
they're
you.
not backing down. And why would they? They have every incentive to continue to apply this pressure until the US backs off. And so they're going to continue this. And it's, if we abandon the Middle East, well, that's the end of the United States of America as a world superpower because, the back in the 1970s, after Richard Nixon ended the convertibility of the dollar into gold, and we had a fiat currency. One of the things a deal that was brokered between OPEC and the United States, that OPEC would sell its oil in dollars, and that would underpin global demand for the US dollar. So that's why we saw Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm 35 years ago, was to protect Saudi Arabia. That was part of our agreement. Well, if we abandon that area now, we're essentially ceding the entire Persian Gulf to Iran.
Mm.
Because at that point, they might say, yeah, the Strait of Hormuz might open back up. But I'm just saying, if I were in Iran's shoes, I'd say everyone that wants to send a ship through the Strait of Hormuz has to pay us tribute. And we're going to determine who does or doesn't. And it's under these conditions. So at this point, you can't simply just call off airstrikes and end the war.
Wow.
But how exactly you stop Iranian drones and missiles is extremely unclear. And I don't know that you can, again, outside of a ground invasion or a nuclear war.
Speaking of drones, the FBI just put out a bulletin warning police departments in California in recent days that Iran could retaliate for American attacks by launching drones at the West Coast. Again, this is according to an alert. Let me just read this. Quote, we recently acquired information that as of early February of 2026, Iran allegedly aspired to conduct a, quote, surprise attack using unmanned aerial vehicles from an unidentified vessel off the coast of the United States homeland, specifically against unspecified targets in California in the event that the U.S. conducted strikes against Iran. Now, stop. Guys, Brett, do you remember, now you probably keep up with this like I do. Now, look, I may get the years wrong on this, but I think this was 2 years ago. It's incredible how fast time goes by. But do you remember the whole drone debacle, the incursion of all those drones off of the East Coast, and they were up there in New Jersey, New York, and different places? Do you remember when that government official came on? I wish I could, if I had the video, I'd pull it up, but there was a public official that came out and he claimed that he set off of the coast of the East Coast and he saw an Iranian warship off the coast of it was somewhere off the East Coast. He saw an Iranian warship and these drones were coming off of that ship. Do you remember that? Because I remember that specifically, and we'll try to put that video, guys, in here when we do our final edit on this to get this out here so we can show you that video. But it just really makes you wonder. And then to this day, we never really got a clear answer. Shock, right? We never got a real clear answer on who these belong to, what were their objectives, what was their mission. Now, if you remember, before Trump got elected on the second term, he came out, because this was right when this was going on, and he made a statement, when I become elected as president, I will give you a clear answer on what these were. And everybody held its breath, and we got this kind of generic explanation of what they were. They're not a threat to national security, and it just kind of died off, and everybody forgot about it, and we went to the next event, just like everything else. So it makes me wonder about this. But now we're being told by officials, and people in California are kind of they're a little nervous about this, and they're on edge. And I know many of our viewers, you guys are from the West, and you're listening. And you're watching this. How real do you think this threat is, Britt? What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, well, I think it is. Whether or not this actual threat is real or not, I don't have any insider information, but the threat is real. I mean, we saw in the Russia-Ukraine war, So if you remember, I think this was just last year, Ukraine had sent in through trucks different
Yep.
drones that went across the country. I mean, thousands of miles away from Ukraine, and unleashed these drones on different strategic targets within inside Russia. And
Mm,
so we've seen that. We know that there's uh, was it K clubs, which are these missile launchers that are disguised as containers on a container ship. So we've seen those around for years, and so we know, with as busy as America's ports are, as porous as our borders are, the freedom of movement that we have here, that any type of strike like that, it's almost impossible to guard against if an enemy is really determined to do it. And we see the same problem with that we see with these missile and drone strikes in the Middle East, which is you can have great interceptors, but the rate needs to be 100%. They don't have to be 100% and
true. Yeah.
hitting their targets with their missiles and drones. If 4% get through, that's a victory, because they can create these, and they can mass produce these and send them out while it's depleting our interceptors. So it's the same thing here, and we've seen this with terrorism for decades, which is we have to be 100% effective in stopping it. They only have to be 1% successful for an attack to have a
That's
great bearing.
that's true. And this comes on the heels of I don't know if you saw this report, but the U.S. intercepted encrypted communications believed to have originated in Iran. Now, this comes as there was these strange signals, these numerical signals that was being sent out of Iran, and they were sending them to the United Kingdom. And now they're pulling the U.S. into this as well, and they think that these are signals to awaken the sleeper cells. Which look, we've been hearing about this for how long? I've been doing this for years, and I know you have it too. We've been hearing about this for decades. The sleeper cells are here. They're waiting. They're waiting for the trick. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there was ever a time to initiate the sleeper cells, it would probably be now, being that they're in a full-fledged conflict with Israel and America.
Yeah, I agree. And just as we've seen with the Iranian proxies throughout the Middle East, in the 2.5 years since October 7th, we've seen massive strikes against Hezbollah, and a lot of people said their capabilities are severely degraded. We don't think they'll even be an issue in this conflict. And then last night, they unleashed a barrage of missiles and drones on northern Israel. And so there's a tendency of people to think, because it hasn't happened in the past, that'll continue to be the case. And that, look at last year with the 12 days of war and conflict that we had between the United States, Israel, and Iran.
Right.
And then 2 years ago, I think in April 2024, we had an exchange of different airstrikes and missile strikes from between Israel and Iran. And people all along the way, I've heard the media say Israel or Iran is significantly degraded. They don't have the capability. That's the best they've got, right? Those are the types of things that we heard. And it's clear, it should be clear at this point, that they were holding back,
Mm,
probably trying to buy time to build up their nuclear program, buy time to strengthen their position. But clearly they had the same abilities that we're seeing now back then, and held back on them. So as you said, now when we were told, and the objectives have changed, we've heard a whole bunch of different things over the last 2 weeks. But on day one of this conflict, President Trump came out and said the objective is regime change.
right.
Because I
Now I'm
think that's
hearing
what he
that.
thought would happen that day.
Right. Now
And
I'm. Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
yeah, so from the Iran's perspective, okay, we're marked for death. It's a matter of survival. Hold back nothing. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing them bomb everything in sight, all the oil installations, refineries, storage facilities, tankers in the Persian Gulf, anything trying to go through the Strait of Hormuz to apply pressure on the United States to stop the conflict and end it on Iran's terms. That's what they're trying to do.
Right. And a lot of people, and you got to realize that this, the leadership that is of Iran, we're talking about the mullahs and the clerics and the ayatollahs, they all have this radical ideology and this end time Islamic perspective of, I mean, it's in the Hadith, it's in their writings. It may be in the Quran, but I know that it's in there in their traditions that, and I'm talking about the radical sect of this, that they believe that there has to be, in order to usher in their Islamic Messiah in the end days, there has to be a major war between the West and the East. That's why they view the little Satan and the big Satan. And so, as Britt's saying here, this is they want chaos. They want as much bloodshed and chaos and destruction as possible because these people have this radical ideology that this will usher in their Messiah. So what they have nothing to lose. And Britt, now that's in the Middle East. And let me throw up this angle. One of the things I'm concerned about, and that we did a whole podcast on this, is in the unseen realm, is if, God forbid, we were to put troops on the ground, then I'm concerned that we're going to deal with major spiritual warfare because there is a prince, chief spirit over that region. And you guys can find the reference to this in the book of Daniel, because this was called, it was identified as the Prince of Persia. And again, you go to Ephesians chapter 6, and it gives you a rank of demons, and that it's almost like a military rank that Paul was, when he was teaching the church of Ephesus, he used this illustration. And these principalities are chief prince spirits over regions and certain demographics. And that same chief spirit, that chief principality, is still over Iran. And I believe, Brett, that our troops in the Gulf Wars in the past, they encountered this chief prince spirit because there was weird stuff that went on. These sandstorms that took place. There was freak accidents with helicopter crashes and just different things. Because we're seeing this in the unseen realm. And this is why I am very concerned if and when we get to that point where we put, now again, Trump said, no, there'll be no troops on the ground, but Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said we're not going to rule it out. So again, guys, your guess is as good as ours. Tune in tomorrow as this thing changes on a dime. But if we put troops on the ground, that's one of my concerns on that. I'd love to hear your any insight on that.
Yeah, I think that should be a very big concern for the reason you stated, but also just what we're seeing on the ground there. Despite the fact that they claim air superiority has been achieved, it clearly is not, because these missiles and drones continue to be sent. So air superiority in the sense that Iran is not flying jets and bombers across the Middle East. They're gone. If they had any, they're gone. But they can still strike at will all of these targets. So we put ground troops in an area. Those ground troops are going to be susceptible to missiles and drones, and not to mention the terrain in Iran. It's a vast country. I don't know that a lot of people realize it's probably 2.5 times the size of Texas, or about the size of Alaska. 92 million people. So this would be a long and bloody fight to take control of Iran, and I certainly hope that we don't go that route, but again, we're in quite a predicament here because there are only hard options left.
Right. And again, the latest is you got all these countries being pulled in. France has dispatched a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean, joining British warships. Now here's where it gets interesting. You've got Greece and Turkey that have rushed forces to Cyprus, where now their fighter jets now face each other across a partition line that has divided the island for over 50 years. Even Australia said this past Monday that it's sending missiles and a radar plane to help the UAE and other Gulf countries defend themselves from Iran. So this is expanding and increasing. And I know you and I has never lived through a major world war. I wasn't alive when the Vietnam War was taking place and at its peak. I wasn't, we weren't here for World War One, World War Two. So now this is going to be a heavy question here, but it has to be asked. Could we be on the precipice of seeing a third world war in our lifetime? And could this be the straw? Because you've got Russia, you've got Turkey. Russia's threatening. Putin came out and said that this needs to stop. You've got, Erdogan in Turkey. You got all these other nations, and we'll get to the prophetic aspect of that here at the latter part of this podcast. But again, people, this is what they're concerned about. Are we going to be pulled into a global conflict here?
It's not out of the realm of possibility. So we know there will be at least a World War III because we read about that in Revelation chapter 6. I don't know that this is necessarily it, but maybe what's in chapter 6 is World War IV. We really don't know what's going to come as a result of this. But we definitely see both sides at a point where it's very difficult for them to de-escalate at this point.
Right.
And the impact for the entire globe is so significant. Everyone in the world has a vested interest in seeing the Strait of Hormuz reopened. I mean, so there's going to be maximum pressure applied to end the conflict one way or another.
True.
So how that plays out remains to be seen. I think that we're probably a lot closer to nuclear war than people would like to think as a result of this, because of the options that we're running out of. I think that while they haven't sent troops into the area, China and Russia are firmly on the side of Iran, because I think ultimately this conflict is about a much bigger issue than simply Iran's nuclear program and the protection of Israel as a U.S. ally. We've seen in the past, there's been talk about, well, whoever is the leader in AI and the development of these advanced technologies will be ruler of the world. Vladimir Putin said that back in 2017. We've had several U.S. officials say that in the past year, including Doug Burgum, Secretary of Interior, saying, how do we solve this energy question? This is what keeps me up at night. If China wins the AI race, we're done for. They rule over us. And so we've seen since Trump came in this resource war against China. Okay, that's why we want Greenland. We want to make Canada the 51st state. We go into Venezuela. All of this is about energy and base metals, natural resources. And so Iran is the last piece of that puzzle because they control that Strait of Hormuz, as we're seeing now. They're the only non-US aligned entity in the Persian Gulf. And so they've been sending their oil to China. So if we can transform their government into one that is pro-United States, well, then that gives us the ultimate counter to any power play by China, because we could simply cut off their access to fossil fuels. Because they've already lost that access to Venezuelan oil, and now they would lose it to Iranian oil as well as the whole Gulf. And so really, this is a huge power struggle between China and the BRICS nations and the United States and its allied nations. And so how this plays out is not insignificant. It's not something that can be just, we'll come back and fight another day, right? I'm gonna call off the airstrikes and we'll do this later. No, if this war is not won, then I believe it means probably the end of the petrodollar and the end of the United States and its post-World War II dominance of the global financial and military order. And it means the ascendance of China and Russia and the BRICS nations. And so there's a lot at stake here, and I don't see either side willingly, easily conceding or backing down. And so we can talk more about this as we talk about the prophetic implications. But one thing we do know for sure is the Bible tells us in Ezekiel 38, verse 11, there will come a time when Israel is in a state of peace and tranquility,
Right.
undisturbed.
Yep. Go ahead.
We have not seen that, right?
Right.
We
So
haven't
it.
seen that
Yep.
since
Yep.
1948. So it's a future time. The Bible's 100% accurate. Every prophecy we've seen in the past has come true. So that prophecy will also be fulfilled. How we get from where we are today and there, I don't know. And a whole lot of bad things can happen.
Yep.
So even if we don't see a global war, just a regional war, I wrote a piece on this last week about how we could see something that almost eclipses the death toll of World War II without it even being World War III. Because, again, nothing's going through the Strait of Hormuz. That includes not just oil, but it also includes food. So these Gulf countries import 90% of their food. So you got millions of people that are going to be running out of food in short order. And then we saw something really disturbing over the weekend where we saw, I believe it was the United States struck a desalination plant in Iran.
Yep. Yep. That's
It was
correct.
on the Qum Island, I believe, and 30 villages were cut off from drinking water.
Not good. Yep.
Only about 3% of Iran's drinking water comes from desalination plants, but that's not the case for some of these other nations on the other side of the Persian Gulf. So in Saudi Arabia, it's 70%. In Qatar, it's 99%.
Man.
Bahrain,
So
95%. And so we saw them respond with an attack on a desalination plant in Bahrain. And so just a few of these plants can take out the drinking water of millions of people. And so if this continues to escalate, I mean, that's a humanitarian crisis where you can't evacuate millions of people in 72 hours with no drinking
mm,
water. It's not, the math isn't that simple because there are some reserves held in place. But as this goes on, if we see wastewater treatment plants taken down, if we see other civilian infrastructure taken down, uh, we're going to see a massive death toll from disease and starvation and things of that nature, that as we've seen in wars in the past, like World War I and World War II. So this could get very ugly and very serious very quickly. Beyond just the economic or geopolitical ramifications, this could be a humanitarian disaster on par with two world wars without even being called a world war.
man, that's everything. The last 10 minutes that you just talked about that was heavy, guys. If you were paying attention to what he just said, that was some heavy. I mean, we're basically what he's saying here is that we've gone too far now to turn back. This thing has to be finished. It has to be complete. We can't just say one day, you know what, we're done. We're just gonna count our losses and just cut out. No, this thing is gone. We've crossed that threshold now where this is going to get bad. I mean, no matter how you slice this is going to get ugly. Now, Brett, there's two concerns, and then I want to shift to the prophetic aspect of this. Two concerns that I have. One is, let's talk about China for a second. Do you believe that when all the dust settles of this, whatever that looks like, or this could come in the middle of this, do you think that, China's sitting back and watching this, and could they be emboldened by the United States actions to just go into foreign countries and bring, and carry out military strikes in order to, for an objective, to get what we want, basically? I'm just saying, guys, it's the truth. We did it in Venezuela. We're doing it in Iran, and Cuba is next. Could this embolden China to invade Taiwan? Because they've talked about it. Military analysts have been warning about it. And could this be the thing that emboldens them to carry this out?
It absolutely could, because one of the things we're seeing is we've been told for years that it's the United States military munitions are at depleted levels, especially with all that we've given to Ukraine. And so we've seen, for instance, missile interceptors moved out of South Korea into the Middle East as a result of this conflict. Well, now South Korea is vulnerable to the same types of attacks we're seeing in the Middle East taking place from North Korea. And so, similar to Taiwan, it's like, how are we going to defend Taiwan if we're bogged down in the Middle East? So, the longer this goes on, the more depleted our resources become, and they're not easily replaced. It takes a long time. And unfortunately, our supply chain, we've put ourselves in a position over the past 2 to 3 decades where much of our military supply chain, critical components in our military supply chain, run through China. And so, if China were to cut those off, we would not be able to wage war. And that's one of the reasons that I believe that we're trying to cut off this oil access and energy access to China as order to hold that leverage over them so that they're reluctant or unable to use that leverage against us. And so we're in a very precarious situation. And again, we're leaving the whole Pacific theater vulnerable to attack. And again, Taiwan falls, about 90% of the world's semiconductors are manufactured in Taiwan.
Yep.
That is a huge piece of leverage that could be held over the United States. Our economy could fall to shambles if we're cut off to access, if access to those is cut off.
Well, and then the other concern, and I would advise, and I'm thinking you're probably on the same page with me. If we, all of us that live in the West, we need to keep our head on a swivel, because if these sleeper cells are here, Iran just put out a warning, a fresh warning yesterday, and we reported this on our main website at End Time Headlines, that because they know that they're losing a lot of their teeth are being knocked out as far as their weaponry and their ability to carry out these attacks. So now they're resorting to cyber attacks. They're threatening banking institutions in the West. And then another thing I'm concerned with, Brett, is if these sleeper cells are here in America, they could take down major infrastructure. The water supply could be a threat. The electrical grid. Hospitals. In fact, I saw a report somewhere where Iran was claiming responsibility for carrying out a cyber attack against a hospital. Now, I can't remember where it was at, but I did see that. Do you agree that's a real threat here?
Yeah, it's definitely a real threat. I mean, all these targets are vulnerable. We've seen attempts made in the past. So I believe a couple of years ago in Texas, Iran managed to break into some municipal water systems and actually open up water lines and cause minor flooding in some areas. But at the time, it was noted they're testing these things to see what they can get away with and if it'll work the way they want it to when the time and place comes. So we've seen vulnerabilities there. We've seen substations that have been attacked in the past in California, some just many years ago. And because those attacks weren't successful, people sort of put them in the back of their mind and forgot about them. But
That's good.
We can't guard against all of these different vulnerabilities. And again, we're seeing in real time some of that happen, play out right before us. So, for instance, back in 2019, drones attacked the Abqaiq oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia. 5% of the world's oil was processed through that facility. And it caused very minor damage at the time and sort of made news headlines for a day and then went away. But at the time, I said, we've entered a totally new era. And now we're seeing that done in mass in the Middle East, right in front of us. All of these ports, storage facilities, processing facilities are have become targets. They're being hit. We saw the Nord Stream pipeline taken out back during Russia-Ukraine a few years ago. So we're seeing underwater cables being cut. So civilian infrastructure, there's no infrastructure that's not off limits. We're seeing in some of this modern warfare.
Right.
And so we need to be as prepared as possible. The Bible tells us the prudent person foresees danger and takes appropriate action.
That's true.
And so be as resilient as you possibly can, because we really don't know what risks lie ahead.
True. So we got about 12 minutes. So I want to try to hit two questions, maybe do about 6 minutes on each one of these. The first question is another thing that this entire conflict has done is it has shined a spotlight on the rise of anti-Semitism and the hatred towards Israel, period. And this is coming even among in the conservative camps. It's getting split. There's a split now. Some of these main voices, these radio hosts, pundits, and these podcasters, and I don't want to, and we don't need to name names, guys. Y'all know who these are. We've talked about this exhaustively. But I'm seeing this among, proclaimed Christians, just the hatred towards Israel and the Jews. Are you seeing this as well?
Yes, unfortunately, all across X, different X accounts, formerly known as Twitter, I see this all the time. Accounts, in some cases, that I've followed for years, all of a sudden you'll see these cartoons pop up that are really reminiscent of the anti-Semitic cartoons we saw 100 years ago that were propping up. And some of the language that's being used about who controls the world.
Yep.
It's the same thing we saw leading up to Nazi Germany and the Holocaust. And we should expect that because it's the same one behind it. You mentioned earlier, Ephesians tells us that we're not fighting flesh and blood enemies. We're fighting these dark demonic forces. And the Jewish people are their target, right? That's Satan's target, or one of his many targets. And so we would expect to see that, unfortunately. And that's exactly what we're seeing. But yes, I've definitely seen a spike, particularly in the last few months, it seems.
Well, and you've got these people that are fanning the flame because they're the ones that are provoking this. And I believe that, the Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlsons, even now Megyn Kelly's jumped on board with this. Nick Fuentes has jumped on board. So these main people, they're the puppets that are being, the puppet master obviously is Satan pulling the strings, but it's the hierarchy that goes up and then goes down, and then they are just fueling the flame because these people are listening to this anti-Semitic propaganda, and they're just jumping on board with this. And this is very sad. And I believe it's setting the stage for 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Paul's talked about in his day, there was the mystery of iniquity or mystery of lawlessness that was already at hand. But he said, and it'll do so until two things happen. One is the removal of the restrainer, and then the Antichrist is revealed. So I always say it like this. John the Baptist came and he prepared the way for the Messiah. And so there has to be an Antichrist spirit, or this mystery of lawlessness and mystery of iniquity, that prepares the way for the arrival of the Antichrist. And I believe that's what we're seeing unfold in real time. So then my next question is, now here's the big one, is, okay, guys, prophetically speaking, we know. Now, this is a little controversial because there is some voices out there that believe, now I'm going to name some of these major prophetic wars that has not happened. Now, some camps will say they were already fulfilled. For example, Psalm 83, some say that this is not actually a war that's prophetic. It's more of an inspired song that came out of inspiration. But let me name the big ones here, and then I want your take on where you think we're going on the next phase of this. So you've got, you got Psalm 83 war, which again, I don't know your take on what, if you believe that's an actual war. Some don't. Some say it was already fulfilled. I know Amir believed it was an actual war and it was fulfilled in the 1970s. Others think it's a futuristic war. Then you have Isaiah 17, which is the destruction of one of the oldest capitals of cities, of the world, and that's the capital of Syria, which is Damascus. Isaiah 17 says Damascus will become a ruinous heap. Has never been fulfilled yet. That's a futuristic war. Then you've got the war of Gog, Magog, Ezekiel 38, 39, which is a coalition of nations. The I call it the trifecta. The big ones is ironically Persia, which is modern day Iran. You have Russia involved and Turkey. And then you got other nations involved in that. And as Brett pointed out, when you read Ezekiel, it says this happens in the latter days of Israel when they're dwelling in safety without bars or gates. Well, that can't be happening now, guys, because that's not the state that Israel's in. So, in your opinion, Brett, where if you were and I know none of us are going to be, we see, I call it, we see through a glass darkly. We see in part, we prophesy in part. But in what you've studied, and as much as you've done this, where could you see possibly us going? Now, I know that's a lot to chew on there, but
Sure. Yeah, so as I said before, Ezekiel 38:11 tells us about that time of peace and tranquility where Israel is undisturbed, just as you said, and it tells us that it describes the modern day nation state of Israel, all the people gathered back from among the nations where they were exiled, and that it would occur in the latter days. So we know it's the modern day nation state of Israel. We've never seen them in that state of peace and tranquility undisturbed. So that lies still future. So that's coming. But how do we get from where we are today to then? I would think the elimination of the Iranian regime would go a long way toward creating that type of environment, because they are a funder and a trainer of Hezbollah and Hamas and Houthis and all these other proxies around the Middle East that threaten Israel. So you could see a fall of the Iranian regime at some point in the future that clears the path for that. But again, is that tomorrow, or is that somewhere down the
yeah,
road? And what happens in between? So, as you said, people have different opinions on Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17. I believe both are prophetic in nature and point to the future. And this is why I believe that. If you read Psalm 83, there are quotes in there about what people would say about the land of Israel. Come, let us take these pasture lands. Their God isn't there. They belong to us. Some of the very same things we've heard since 1948 are right there in Psalm 83. And then to me, the key verse is verse 13. There's a prayer of what to do to Israel's enemies. And all of Psalm 83 is written as a prayer. And so we go, right there. It says, "Oh my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind, as the fire burns the woods and as the flame sets the mountains on fire." So when we go to verse 13 of Isaiah 17, we read God answering in the exact same language what we read in verse 13 right there about the whirling dust and the chaff in the wind. And it says that their enemies will be destroyed like that. So we see,
wow,
I believe, a prayer here in Psalm 83 and then an answer to that prayer in Isaiah 17. Unfortunately, Isaiah 17 also comes with it in verse 1, I believe it is, about the destruction of Damascus. As you pointed out, the oldest continuously inhabited city in recorded history. It will cease to be a city. And then we read there in verses 2 and 3, what is northern Israel lying in ruin, on into verses 4 and 5. These are not prophecies that are favorable to Israel. It shows destruction in northern Israel. And so we could very much see a scenario where Hezbollah or a group of these proxies with Iran causes mass destruction in northern Israel, and Israel responds with a nuclear weapon. I don't know. That's all speculation on my
wow,
part. But we could see a scenario like that where Israel becomes the cornered animal that Iran has been, and says, all right, all bets are off, just as Iran has. We're not going to hold anything back. We're going to destroy this enemy once and for all. And they wipe out the enemies on their immediate border. And then somewhere within that time frame, we see the Iranian regime fall as well. That would create the type of environment where we see that we read about in Ezekiel 38 and 39, especially verse 11 of Ezekiel 38. And it would probably pave the way for a number of peace agreements between Israel and Arab nations, specifically Saudi Arabia and Israel. And so we could see what people would view, many people would view, and clearly Israel views from Ezekiel 38 and 39, peace for our time, peace in the Middle East. But we know that that's a false peace, and that the invasion of the Gog of Magog invasion is right around the corner. We also know that Israel is alone in
That's
terms
true.
of, the United States is not protecting Israel. Is the United States unable? Well, they may be after this war for the reasons we just talked about. It could also be, we see, just as you mentioned, this rise in anti-Semitism, and politically, the United States does not want to back Iran or Israel, and no one else does as well. So, but it says Israel is alone except with God, and God is all Israel needs. God supernaturally destroys this Gog of Magog invasion. So I believe that's in the future, but what we're seeing now very well, there's a high probability this will set the stage for that, put the conditions in place that lead to the Gog of Magog.
What's your take on Jeremiah 49? Because I know that everybody has different. There's camps that believe
Sure.
this was fulfilled, and there's camps that believe this is futuristic. Again, you guys listen by Apple or by Spotify. Jeremiah 49 is the prophecy of the bow of Elam. Again, in that day, modern, Persia. We're talking about Persia, Iran, and the bow. This was an instrument of war they used at that in that time, that they would use these projectiles against their enemy. And modern vernacular would be, again, we're talking about ballistic missiles. So I would love your thoughts on this. I know we got to wrap this up, but is this historically been fulfilled? And again, we're not going to hold it against you if you have a different view. That's what we're all in this
Sure.
thing. We're trying to figure this thing out, man. We're all on.
Yeah.
We're not in. You and I on a road trip, and we've got an old school map, and we're pulling out. You remember those days? You had to pull out we didn't have GPS. We had to pull out a map, and we're like, wait a minute, I didn't see this back road. Where's this dirt road on here? I didn't see this. So we're just trying to figure this out. We've got the destination, and we're just trying to get there. We're two brothers trying to find this destination. So again, what's your thoughts on this right here? We got it pulled it up for you guys watching.
So my thoughts, I believe this has been fulfilled in the past. I don't believe that it speaks to the future, except toward the end where it talks about, in the latter days, I'll bring back the captives of Elam, meaning I think that's pointing to the millennial kingdom, and when many nations that have been opposed to God in the past and opposed to Israel in the past
Okay.
have their relationship with the Lord reconciled and come back. We know that this was fulfilled, whether there's a dual fulfillment or not, but this was
Right.
fulfilled
Thank
in the
you.
past, no longer is. Um, but I see it as 100% fulfilled in the past, meaning when we've seen these dual fulfillments, for instance, there was a partial fulfillment of Isaiah 17 in the past as well, with the destruction of Damascus, but not to the complete degree that we read about
That's good.
in the beginning of that passage. And so here, that's what I see, but I could be wrong. I'm totally open-minded to, and like you said, there's a number of people that hold the opposite viewpoint that I
Right.
hold in high regard.
Well,
So,
let me tell you my perspective. This is what and I could be wrong as well. And I know others in our camp, they vary too. Wouldn't it be interesting? Let me just say that. Wouldn't it be interesting if we're seeing a dual fulfillment of this in our lifetime, where in which Persia will be dismantled? Because in here it says that the kings and the princes, or the leadership, will be destroyed, not the people, but the people they will rise up again, and they will have freedom, because in verse 38, God says, I'll set my throne in Elam. Now, this would be interesting, Brett. Again, we don't know. We're just talking here. It'd be interesting if this is the reprieve that comes to Iran and the Persian people, and they finally get their freedom. And of course, there's so many variances and so many what ifs in this. But let's just, for a hypothesis, let's go there. What if this is the reprieve that they get, where in which now I saw an article from, what was it, CBN News or somewhere, saying that this could open the door for the largest underground church to thrive and come alive, and the gospel could be spread all through the 1040 window, and it could come out of this. This would be amazing. I know it sounds very far-fetched, but it would be amazing. But even if, guys, if this brings a reprieve, we know that eventually Iran has to be reestablished, restructured, regrouped, and revived in the end days. Because here's what's interesting, Brett, that when you read, let me see if I can pull this up. I know we're going over time. Is this okay with you? Do you got just a few more minutes?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I want to pull this up. Because this has always been interesting to me. I want to pull this verse up. We'll pull this up together and we'll read this. When you go into Ezekiel 38, the one thing that always got me was, if you go down into verse 4, it says that, quote, now this is the Lord speaking, I will turn you around. Thus, if I turned you around, right now you're facing me. You're looking at me. You're facing me. But to imply that God is turning you around means your back is to me. Thus, out of sight, out of mind, I'm not in your foresight. I'm not in the crosshairs. But something has to happen to turn again, these countries, these nations, to turn them around. And of course, the hooks are put in the jaws. It's plural tense. Now, we could probably take a whole hour more podcast, and we're not going to do that on this segment. And we could sit here and talk about what are the hooks in the jaws. And we could probably pull up 5 different scenarios of what the hooks in their jaws. But I've always thought this was interesting, that these nations, that God specifically turns them around and pulls them towards Israel in the latter days when they're in peace and safety, without bars, without gates, and dwelling safety. So it implies here, again, this is an hypothesis, something has to happen between now and then in order to pull Israel into a false sense of security, to let down their guard. Thus, the enemies regroup and God puts it into their hearts, just like he does in Revelation 17 with the 10 kings that team up with Antichrist, but they will come against Israel. This is very fascinating to me. Is that kind of how you see it? And some of the people has asked, could this be the fulfillment of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2? Now, I know a lot of people put that with Daniel 9:27, where it says, when they shall say peace and safety, or not, that's 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, excuse me. When they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction shall come upon them. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's hard to imagine the current Iranian regime remaining in power, and we end up in Ezekiel 38:39 with Israel being somehow surprised or caught off guard by this invasion.
Right.
So it stands to reason that it's at some point a new regime will take over, one that at least does not have an openly adversarial stance toward Israel, and is enough of a lack of a threat, so to speak, that Israel is not concerned with them. And so a lot of things have to change from where we are today. And I think at the heart of this conflict from Israel's standpoint is eliminating those threats. And so it stands to reason that we would probably see most, if maybe not all of those, eliminated before this conflict comes to an end. Again,
Wow.
does that mean it happens this weekend or 6 months from now or a year from now? Remains to be seen. But at the same time, you look at the way this is playing out right now, and and from the United States standpoint, it's hard to see how they reopen the Strait of Hormuz and how this happens.
Right. Yeah.
But we could see, and again, Israel has done some amazing things within enemy territory.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps they could engineer some sort of government takeover from within Iran as all of this is going over. And we do wake up one day and find that the Iranian regime has fallen.
Well, and I'm going to say this real quick, and then we're going to close this. Benjamin Netanyahu, we talked about this in a podcast. We got the video, we pulled it up. He said in an interview with Sean Hannity, he said that this war is going to lead. Now he's talking about when this is all done, dust settled. He said this will lead to, and I quote, peace treaties. And he said we will see peace unlike any other generation. Now, you and I both know that he's probably implying the stocking or the building up of the Abraham Accords. And we know, I believe that you're probably going to agree with me on this. Eventually, this is going to lead to the Daniel 9:27 covenant of in the book of Daniel.
Yeah, it appears that way. So
Yep.
we'll see how it all plays out. But yes, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
So, well, Brett, thank you so much, man, for joining us. Again, we'd love to have you back on. I hope that you'll be a part of our program again, be a regular guest on here. Real quick, for you guys listening by Spotify, I want him to, again, in case you're just joining us in the premiere, I'm going to let him give you the information on where you can connect with him, and then
Sure.
and we're going to close out this podcast.
Well, again, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope to be back again. So thank you very much. And if anybody's looking to see the videos or the articles that I put out, they can find me at brittgillette.substack.com. That's where I put out all of the content that I put out. But I'm also on YouTube and Rumble if people want to watch the videos over there. But again, if you want to catch everything, brittgillette.substack.com is the place to go.
All right. Thanks, brother. Again, appreciate you coming on. We'll see you on the next one. All right, guys. So again, thank you so much for being a part of the program. Again, if you would do us a favor and hit that like button. If you've not done that yet, hit that like button. You guys listen by Apple, by Spotify, you can do the same thing. Give us a good review. That's the same as hitting that like button out there in podcast land, and push this out on the algorithm. If you enjoy this content and you'd like to see more of this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell notification. And don't forget, if you've not picked up our free podcast, this is a free app, not podcast. Well, you'll find the podcast on it, but the app is free and it's a gift to us, to you. You can find it on your Play Store. Again, Apple, Android, we got you covered. Just go to your Play Store, type in End Time Headlines, look for our official trademark ETH logo, and download it today. Under the description of this video, you'll see where it says download our free app. If you click on that, you can get it as well. Now you say, why do I need that? Because you can have everything right there at your fingertips. You can watch, you can listen to these interviews like this, breaking news, prophecy updates, and then of course, all the regular headlines when we get them. So, and as always, guys, if you enjoy our information, revelation, the equipping, the all of the above, and you'd like to know more about partnering with End Time Headlines, here's a quick video on that, and we'll be right back with our closing thoughts.
If you enjoy our content and would like to partner with End Time Headlines, helping us make more people aware of the times and seasons which we are in from a prophetic perspective, you can go to endtimeheadlines.org and click Support. Here you can give a one-time gift or a monthly pledge on our main website. This page also shows you how to give electronically through Cash App or Venmo. If you would like to give by check or money order, you can make it out to End Time Headlines at P.O. Box 1391, Monroe, Georgia 30655. Or you can give through our free End Time Headlines app by pressing the bottom right button that says Donate.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Thursday night, March 12th. We hope that you guys will be here tomorrow night. We plan on being here Friday night on the 13th, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here, same time, same place, same channel. And again, depending on what goes on this weekend, we may be on here for a special weekend segment. Again, we never know what's going to happen, so we're always going to try to be there for you and get you up to par what's going on. Don't forget, guys, next week, we got Lauren Carone coming on, and we've got Pete Garcia that will be joining us for the first time. So we're excited about that. And then we've got Michael Snyder that's going to be a part of the program. And we've got a lot of guests lined up for the future. So until we see you guys on the next one, I pray the Lord bless you, may He keep you, and may His countenance shine upon you. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the End Time Headlines podcast. We pray that you've been blessed and equipped by today's message. For more information about how you can help partner with our ministry, please visit endtimeheadlines.org.